I'm George Gallow, and I present كلمة on Al-Mayadeen television. Here we are in London. I speak my words freely, either in Parliament, on television, here on the streets of London. كلمة means free word. That's what I speak. So كلمة is a two-way conversation. Check it out on Al-Mayadeen television. Welcome to كلمة with me, George Galloway, on Al-Mayadeen television, coming to you from London, but discussing Somalia. Very far away from here, very far away from the experience of most people in this country, though once upon a time that was not so. I'm joined by an audience of distinguished experts and one or two enthusiastic amateurs like me. I say that with accentuation this week because I haven't been in Somalia for almost 40 years. And when I was in Somalia almost 40 years ago, Somalia was a fully functioning state, had one government, had a president, Siad Barre, who was respected, at least internationally, though he had one or two problems at home. He was an ally of the then Soviet Union, and Somalia was a part of the international configuration of forces, and I was on a very definite side then. So I was a friend of Somalia. Since then, I'm sorry to say, I have lost track of the alphabet soup of organizations that have come and left power in Somalia. And I certainly know enough about Somalia today to know that it really is in a mess. All the former colonial powers, European colonial powers, are back involved. Regional neighbors like Ethiopia and Kenya, the first of them an American instrument in Africa, the second an instrument of Britain and the European Union, are all involved, indeed occupying territory in Somalia. And those familiar actors from elsewhere, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and others, are also present with their fingerprints and their footprints in the carnage that is today's Somalia. Vehicle bombs killing hundreds, drones killing people, including targets and non-targets, collateral damage, civilians slain in their scores by American and other airstrikes. It's not easy to see how Somalia gets out of this. And it's not easy for people, certainly in the West, to understand what it's all about. In order to understand that, you have to know that Somalia is strategically a very, very important place. It has a very beautiful coastline, which used to be plied by fishermen and later became known as pirates. Although why an American can go around with a weapon in their millions and not be called pirates, while Somali fishermen with weapons on their boats to protect themselves are pirates, is, I'm sure, an issue that will be teased out in the course of this show. So who's who in Somalia? What's what in Somalia? And what's the future for Somalia? That's our topic tonight here on كلمة. So let me turn to our distinguished experts. You, sir, are the first but not the last of those experts. Please tell us, how did Somalia get here and what state is it in now?
My name is David Otto. I am a counterterrorism expert. Somalia is now an example of what we refer to as, a failed state. It is a clear example of a situation where, you describe a nation as a resource-cursed nation, where each and every regional, each and every external power has seen Somalia as a very good place, to play their geopolitical games. And that is why for almost 40 years now, you have a situation in Somalia whereby, there's an increase rather than a decrease of the stability that, each and every one would have hoped that, Somalia would be in a position of strength today. But you have a country which recently, Al-Shabaab has made itself notorious, for carrying out one of the biggest ever attacks that any terrorist organizations, even ISIL, has not been able to carry out in Mogadishu. So I think Somalia is a clear example of a situation where the defense strategy that the West, has brought in Somalia has failed. It is time for Somalians to stand up for themselves and say, we have to take our country back. If they don't take their country back, if they don't bring the Somalian solution to the Somalian problem, if they don't give back the power to the local authorities in Somalia, Somalia will continue to fail. Because, it is a country which is blessed. But the blessing that Somalia has is now a curse, not only to Somalia. Everybody's beard is on fire. And the high time we resolve the problem in Somalia, the better for Somalians and the better for the world.
Now, you talk of the defense strategy. As far as I can see, the African Union force is a conventional military force going in numbers, a lot of money, $1.5 billion budget, taking territory and then just standing there. And the Al-Shabaab and other fighters melt off into the bush. And then when the African Union moves on, they come back and retake the territory. A far better idea would be, and I think you allude to it, for a fraction of that money, you could train Somali fighters in guerrilla tactics, not as a conventional force, and fight terrorism in that way. Am I right?
But even a quarter of the money that has been spent in Somalia, if you give, somebody who understands the territory of Somalia, he would put monkeys, and snakes on payroll, to track down Al-Shabaab. You have to understand that, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this is what, most of the Americans have to understand. If you give the money and you empower the local Somalians, you train them to be able to identify some of these factors that give rise to Al-Shabaab, luring young guys, young boys and women as young as 12, and then actually forcing parents, to give away their children to Al-Shabaab. If you can train the local people in Somalia, and then you take out all this UN or all this African Union and all these regional states who are coming, only for their own interest, I think Somalia will be a better place. But with the system that is going on with the drone strikes, killing people every day, I think, we'll only get worse even before it gets better.
Who are Al-Shabaab? What are Al-Shabaab? And how did they become capable of carrying out the African 9/11, 500 people nearly killed in one terrorist attack in Mogadishu?
Al-Shabaab is an organization that, took root from Somalia simply because, of the deteriorating economic and political situation. The young people couldn't find jobs, so a better alternative was for them, to find solace, in the hands of radical organizations like Al-Shabaab. That is where they came from. Now they've developed into a more organization which is being fed. Somalia doesn't manufacture arms, but Al-Shabaab is...
Who's behind them?
Of course, you have the issue of, who is behind them. But, a lot of countries have been accused of supplying Al-Shabaab with weapons, but there is no evidence. So it's going to be very difficult for us to actually trace who is actually supplying Al-Shabaab, with all the weapons.
What are the names
they have.
in the frame?
Ethiopia. Well, they've spoken about Ethiopia. They've spoken about Uganda. They've spoken about neighboring states. I think Kenyans as well. But what I think is important, for Somalians is to be able to take this issue into their own hands, because if you take the matters into your own hands, then you can be able to control your borders, you can be able to control your sea lines. Without that, you still have a situation where if your territory is not under your control, then you cannot stop all these people who are supplying you with weapons, from doing that.
Brother, you say the Gulf states, but the Gulf states are, if that were true, the Gulf states would be supplying Al-Shabaab and then going to fight Al-Shabaab. That's not impossible, of course, and it has happened elsewhere. But how credible a charge is that?
Okay. Thank you very much, George. My name is Sahal Ali. I'm a political and social commentator, and I'm very glad to be part of this audience. I have to say a little bit about what you beautifully mentioned at the beginning of the program, and your chances of seeing Somalia as a state in person. I think, as you mentioned it, Somalia was a beautiful country, a paradise, ruled by establishment that put together the country, unified, built institutions. We had one of the strongest armies in Africa. Soon after the independence from the colonial powers in the 1960s, we allied with the West. Between 60 to 69, however, during the military regime of Siad Barre, we started to ally with the East, and that was the fatal mistake we have made. While we were allies of the East, we tried to retake a region that has been missing from us. As you know, historically, the colonial powers divided Somalia into 5: Djibouti, northern Somalia, the southern took Italians took, the northern took the British. The Djibouti was controlled by the French, and there are 2 missing regions to this day: the Ogaden region under the control of Ethiopia, and the Northern Frontier District under the control of Kenya. Somalia tried to retake the Ogaden region, and it paid a heavy price, and it's a reason for our downfall. The whole Western powers stood against us. The Eastern Bloc were themselves unhappy of our moves. So at that point, it was a turning point for Somali politics. The army disintegrated, the opposition, armed opposition formed, and it led to the collapse of Siad Barre's strong government. We were fragmented into groups, and since that period, we have become a victim of foreign intervention. The world tried to make a solution, but they were trying to swipe the slate clean. They brought countries that are at odds with us. Historically, Kenya and Ethiopia, they will always look at this region as a region where they have to do their best to dismantle it because of these missing territories and our long standing claim to get these territories back from them. The other thing, we have unhelpful Gulf regions just around the corner who, in response to your question, are now intervening in our affairs. If I pick up the United Arab Emirates, a rich country, but sadly a dangerous element to the peace and stability, not only of Somali people, but to the whole region. If anybody,
to Syria,
definitely,
to Yemen.
To Yemen. If anybody wants to understand what I'm saying and would like to dispute, just look what happened in Yemen. I mean, it's a human catastrophe engineered by the United Arab Emirates and their masters, whom they take orders from. I think in terms of our country...
Sure who's giving the orders nowadays, but that's another matter.
That's another matter. But what I would like to say very quickly, just to mention, United Arab Emirates have been intervening in Somali politics, and they are rival and unhappy about the Turkish involvement in the Somalian affairs. If you remember, the Erdogan 2011 visit to Somalia has changed politics of that. The United Arab Emirates are carrying and implementing an ugly geopolitics, which is to control our nation and to obliterate our people through wars and man-made disasters. I think they tried to get the Somali on their side against Qatar, and they tried to bribe the state with £80 million. Somalia rejected, and after that rejection, we have seen immediately this deadly attack. I think when we talk about the world is making mistakes, I would like to clear to the world that Shabaab are just nomadic elements who are in the bushes. And it is impossible to assume that they can carry out these attacks without anybody outside financing them, equipping them, training them, guiding them. So what we need here, I think the deadliest attack in Somalia occurred on the 14th of October. There are intelligence reports suggesting that the initial target that the terrorists meant to destroy was the Turkish base, not far from the area, the military camp. The Turkish have been building Somalia, and they were winning the hearts and the minds of Somali people. They were building right in front of everybody's eyes, hospitals, schools, roads, injecting money to where it was needed, and airports. I think other countries, they were just rhetoric. So what we need here to understand that we have been dying right in front of their eyes since the downfall of Siad Barre regime in 1990s. They could have helped it out with their resources, with their wealth. They didn't do. Now they started to engage. Now they have dubious and unwarranted interference in our region. If you look at the DB deals with the autonomous, semi-autonomous region of Puntland, the agreement they signed with the Somaliland to take the control of the strategic port of Berbera without the consent and the knowledge of our nation is total aggression. So what would happen? The other thing, they have trained militias, which they call it, is an effort to help Somalia re-stand on its feet and regain control of their country. And they have used those elements which they have trained with their own money for their vicious attacks and to destabilize our region. All I wanted to say, this is an example of United Arab Emirates taking the sword to chop the head of Somalia and to eliminate. So it is up to us to come together, to unify our country and to stand up to this threat. I think that's one example. Yes.
Well, look, that's two very, very powerful and helpful introductions. Many of the people watching this will not be all that surprised because the modus operandi you describe has been played elsewhere. This is a playbook that will be familiar. And we'll, of course, continue to discuss the perfidy of these Gulf regimes, and not only in your area but elsewhere in Africa, particularly North Africa. But after the break, I want to ask for a proper definition of Al-Shabaab, theologically, politically, ideologically, and also some kind of picture of who's in power now in Mogadishu. Who are the government? I couldn't tell you, and there's not much I don't know. I couldn't tell you even, and I'm confessing this, who's the president of Somalia? And whoever he is he really the president? All of that coming up after the break. You're watching Kalima with me, George Galloway, in London for Al-Mayadeen television, talking about Somalia. We took the Kalima camera onto the streets of London to see what the people thought. Take a look at this.
What do you know about drones? Have you seen one? Have you ever operated one?
No, I've never operated a drone. I think they're incredibly invasive and scary. But they make loads of noise, that's okay.
Drone?
Yes.
Yeah, I seen drone in outside London, on the news.
Have you seen the commercial ones or the military ones?
I saw the commercial ones and I saw the ones that delivering drugs to the prisons.
I've only seen people using them in the park. Yeah, but not as a weapon.
I have never seen drones, but I've heard it a lot in Syria and in Iraq and all the Arab countries. They're just bombing each other, and it's just terrible. Like I feel like I want every country to be peaceful.
So what if I tell you that drones are the main killing machine in Somalia at the moment?
I didn't know that.
No, I had no idea they can kill people with a drone.
I read about that on the web, on the internet, that they're controlling it from some base in somewhere in Africa, and they're shooting people in my country.
How would you feel if I told you that drones are used as killing machines in Somalia?
I would totally believe you, because that is not unprecedented, and we saw that they used it in Syria recently.
you feel when you hear that innocent Somalians are being killed by drones from far away?
Makes me angry, makes me vivid that these Americans are killing my people, and this country is trying to tell me that my country is safe, that I should go back to Somalia. It's just me, I'm getting more angry by that.
Well, more voices of the people later, and we'll come on to the form, the actual content of the war later. But I want to hear from another of our experts. What is Al-Shabaab? Is it ISIS? Is it Al-Qaeda? Is it something exclusively African, something exclusively Somali? And who's in power in Somalia? Please enlighten us.
My name is Abdullah Hirat, socio-political activist. Al-Shabaab is a young Somali organization who were part of Union of Islamic Courts in 2006-2007. And they were the strongest wing of Union of Islamic Courts. And after the invasion of Ethiopia, they joined and had a partnership with Al-Qaeda. Since then, they were, attacking the government and their AMISOM, which is African troops in Somalia, who was part of the problem of Somalia. And also, there's two groups within Al-Shabaab. Very extreme wing of Al-Shabaab linked with Al-Qaeda, and another group which is called within Al-Shabaab Abu Mansur al-Amriki's group and Abu Mukhtar Robo's group, who's being affiliated with Eric Prince.
With who?
Eric Prince. He is an American military expert who based in Emirat. He's the main former Blackwater director or founder of the Blackwater. He is the mastermind of arming, training, and equipping Al-Shabaab wing, which is the most dangerous and disastrous wing within Al-Shabaab. They cooperate with three private military groups called Saracen in Puntland, Alpha Group in Mogadishu, and RRU in Somaliland, who is their heart and the mind of the logistic and distributing arms to Al-Shabaab. They are a private military groups which acts its own. They don't cooperate with the government and regional authorities. They are the most powerful private military within the country. They can kill, they can arrest whoever they want, even the members of the federal government members, parliament, and whoever they see, he have some knowledge about them and how they work. Also, we have a group of organizations closely worked with CIA, supported by American aid within Mogadishu, Puntland, and Somaliland. So the problem we have in Somalia, it's not a small group who from Somalis who act by themselves only, who presenting and trying to destabilize the government only, but we have other factors who destabilizing the society itself. So there is a very controversial situation in Somalia at the moment, and nobody can describe who is who within Al-Shabaab. If we take an example...
What about what is what? What's their ideology? They are taking their lead from Wahhabi sources, but are they more extreme than Al-Qaeda, less extreme? Are they more extreme than ISIS? Are they more the Taliban rather than ISIS and Al-Qaeda? Limited territorial ambitions, for example. That would be a difference, wouldn't it? The Taliban only want to liberate their own country, if liberate is the right word, whereas ISIS and Al-Qaeda have a pan-Islamist approach.
Yep, within the extreme group of Al-Shabaab, the right wing themselves, they have 2 or 3 different agenda. One of them, they have a global mission to implement Sharia law into the whole world. Those groups are linked with Al-Qaeda. We have a group who have a nationalism mentality, who are not feeling confident with the current governments, who see Al-Shabaab as the only option to prevent the country from Ethiopia, from Kenya. And we have other criminals or tribe members who, because of they feel they are under attack from other tribe, who's using the name of the government to attack those tribes, who sees a protection from Al-Shabaab. So there's a different categories within them, but the most powerful, who willing to overtake the government, to invade Ethiopia and Kenya, to go into global war on and implement Sharia law, is the right wing. But they are not the only problem we have. The dangerous problem we have is those who supplying the armies to those groups, to themselves, who carrying out the assassinations, political assassinations, and all those
I'm going
crimes.
to come on to that. Tell me now, if you would, who's ruling Somalia? You mentioned regional government. You mentioned the government. Who are the government, and what is the current state of their legitimacy?
To be honest with you, this is another critical question, but you remember in Latin America and war on democracy, United States of America took a role to dominate the whole world using by its own agencies. I believe we are not free from agencies at the moment. In terms of our government leaders, members of the parliament, military department, intelligence, in the intelligence wing, which is called National NISA. So the current government we have is the most interesting government when you see how they are engaging with the people, how they are attracting the people, how they dealing with the people. But if you look at the other hand, and the contracts and who is behind them, who is supporting them, the closest relationship with the Trump and Trump's office, and the people who's delivering the communication between the White House and the Villa Somalia, you might see there are some things going on there.
Even though Trump regards your country as a toilet.
Exactly. So we
on the list of the shitholes.
So we are in a situation where we have trust and no trust within our government. So we cannot say, they are completely nonsense, but they are doing good job. But we are still suspicious, have some sort of suspicious about who is who within
we're all suspicious of
Villa Somalia.
Our government. Let me come to you, sir, if I may. I mentioned earlier $1.5 billion budget for the African Union military force. The Americans now have armed personnel on the ground in Somalia. They are killing people with drones and with airstrikes from the US Air Force. So you've got an armed presence of African Union soldiers, you've got an increasing role for Donald Trump's America, and you've got Ethiopia, and I think also Kenya, occupying part of your territory, quite apart from the earlier occupations. That's quite a jigsaw puzzle. Help me see it clearly, would you?
Thank you very much, George. My name is Dwali Yusuf. I'm a TV presenter, community worker, and I was speaking on behalf of my country and my community here in UK, and I'm active on a daily basis. Regarding with the Somali issues, when it comes today, we have a government. Let me start from there. We have a new government, better than the previous government.
and the leader of the government of Somalia is called Mohammed Abdullahi Farmajo. He is a man who holding the American nationality, but he's also is a president of Somalia today. He's a man who come from the United States, studied in the United States, and who was a previous prime minister. He had done great jobs with the previous president, Sheikh Sharif, and people liked him. And people rejoiced him the day he took the office on the 8th of February last year. People rejoiced, not only Britain, all over the world. He was a man that the people trusted him, and he's looked like a different man who has an agenda. Somalia needs people who can bring peace, security, unity, development. And as far as we know, Farmajo has done a great job when he was a prime minister. He was only 6 months in the country and he was the prime minister. He was doing a great job. He began to give the salaries to the Somali soldiers who had never seen and barely seen and received any kind of payment. But when he was the prime minister, he established, kind of support for Somali army. He tried to bring the Somali people. Even he told the international community to support Somalis. And beginning from, I think that was 2009. But last year, nobody was expected that the current president would become a president of Somalia. But luckily, I've heard some of the Somali people were awake the whole night and asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make Farmajo the president of Somalia. And including myself, I didn't sleep that night, and everybody was expecting maybe, because Hassan Sheikh, who was the last president for the last 4 years, people were blaming all the time for him. After he came, this current president, Somalia has changed. He told the world Somalia needs a new politics, and he brought new politics, and the people trust him. I remember when Farmajo was announced that he's the president of Somalia, the soldiers, the Somali soldiers, were firing. Every single person were firing, celebrating, firing their bullets to the sky. It was across the world. It was not only. I've seen the jubilee of people in Mogadishu, in Nairobi, in Europe. It was amazing. So that is what we have seen for Farmajo. And let me tell you about the background of Somali government at the moment. The Somali government at the moment is fighting for corruption. Somalia, what has been destroyed was corruption. Feeble leaders, corrupted leaders, susceptible by Western world, including the United States. And let me tell you one thing, frankly, I'm not going to afraid anybody, even Trump or any Western leaders or Africans or Somali leaders or Shabaabis. I want to speak from the bottom of my heart. If the Western world wanted Somali support, they should support as the Turkey has supported Somali people. I respect Mr. Erdogan. Erdogan, wholeheartedly, he took his family, his cabinet, to go to Mogadishu, one of the worst times Somalia had. Somalia had a drought who killed more than 260,000 people. But Erdogan went to there and took his people, his wife, and he, sat with the Somali people. And that is the way the Somali...
Why did he do that?
I believe he's a Muslim man, number one. Number one, he was a Muslim. And he saw Somalia had no friend when it comes from the Western world or the Arab world. And the worst country was the Muslim countries. I condemn, let me finish. I condemn to the Arab world. When it comes to Emirates or when it comes to Saudis, they have never supported us. But this man, he saw Somalia, how it was dying. Americans were bombing every day, the Ethiopians, the Kenyans, and the bullets and the bombs were killing by Somalians was made in the United States of America. When you take who created Al-Shabaab? Let me go back that way as well. Who created Al-Shabaab? Al-Shabaab created by America itself. When it is allowed to back the invasion of Melisanawi in 2006. And that...
Ethiopian invasion.
Yes, Ethiopia, yes. And by myself, that's the day And you, the day you have spoken in the parliament, I remember, in 2006 or 2000, yeah, in 2007, and you say Somalia was under attack, was under occupation, supported by America. And today, if America wants to create environment of democracy in Somalia, it should stop, number one, supporting Kenyans and Ethiopian armies who are killing every day. I really say to Donald Trump, your money, your armor, your Apache, your tank, your bullets is killing our people every day. And you're talking about democracy and you're talking about terrorists. America is terrorizing our country, is terrorizing and killing every day by Somali people. And Mr. Trump, please, don't talk about democracy. Don't talk about and who is terrorizing the world. You are the number one terrorist. You are number one terrorist, I'm saying again, because your bullets and your bombs and your barges are killing every day. And what he's trying, Donald Trump, number one, he's trying to divide Somalia. Politicians are not with us. You know, the leaders of Somalia are not with us. The Kenyans are killing us. The Americans are killing us. The Western countries are killing us. If they, let me say. No. Yeah,
Yeah,
but,
we'll come to that.
Yes,
Apparent.
But let me.
No, you can't because I've got to take a break.
Yeah.
You're watching Kalima with me, George Galloway, on Al-Mayadeen television, coming from London, discussing Somalia. We took the Kalima camera onto the streets of London to see what the people thought. Take a look at this.
Do you think that the Somalian people are getting enough attention in the media about this problem?
No. All we're getting is Donald Trump and the Mexican borders and what he's going to do with Syria and the Korean government fighting with him. And
I don't know. Maybe they're trying to hide something. You know, once again, if it was like the backwards, if American people will be killed by a drone, I'm pretty sure it will appear on the newspaper, on the news, on the radio. Since in Somalia, it's like a hole in the world. Everything that happens in Africa, it seems like it's hidden.
I believe so, because I don't even know exactly what's going on. You know, I mean, I have been away for a while, I must say, but no, I don't really know what's happening in Somalia at present.
Why do you think nobody pays attention to this problem?
To Somalia? Maybe they're not rich enough. Maybe they don't have as much oil as Syria. So, do you know what I mean? If that's the case, then they're a lost cause, and you know people don't want to know.
So, what do you think that can be done to help the situation?
The United Nations need to support all them African countries where the war is getting worse and worse, where ISIS and all them terrorists, Al-Shabaab are there in Somalia, and all them ISIS is not just there in Somalia, they're in Yemen as well, and everyone is dying. It's just the United Nations need to come together and find a way to get rid of these ISIS terrorists.
Nobody else is coming in to see how nobody's given an appeal about all of this, and it's terrible.
Well, some interesting voices from the public. Now, before the break, sir, you made a very powerful contribution. You provided us with some memorable television moments. I can see you're a television presenter, and I can assure you some of your quotes will go far and wide. But there was an inherent paradox in what you were saying, as was from the wings shouted out during what you said, because you blame the United States for killing your people, but your president, whose virtues you were extolling, is an American, and seems, by all accounts, to be close to the Trump administration. But that wasn't the only paradox. You hailed President Erdogan as a benefactor of the Somali people, and his piety was what you attributed that to. That also will seem paradoxical to many of the people watching this, because they have seen a very different President Erdogan in other parts of the world, of the Muslim world, and of course even internally inside Turkey itself. So how would you deal with these apparent paradoxes?
The world has when I look in Somalia today, I mean, every country has their own interests. When I look at my country today, we're in critical situation. We want to have someone who cares about us. You know, Britain has allied with America because the Europeans care about each other. In the Muslim world, when you look at, nobody cares about when it comes to Somalia. Somalia had a civil war since 1991. We were fighting each other. We were killing each other. Non-Arab Muslims, nobody has provided anything, any support. Even they were deporting. I'm condemning Saudi Arabia. The king of Saudi Arabia were deporting Somalis in Saudi Arabia to Somalia into the flame of civil war. That's one of the saddest. When it comes in Emirates, who are trying to divide Somali politics now, politicians, and bribing and paying billions of dollars to make collapse and instability in Somalia. That is a sadness. That is a Muslim country. Forget about even America. So when I look at in Turkey, when I say Erdogan has become a champion. He become a man we can trust him because he doesn't talk. The West, they talk. They said, Somalia, we give $50 billion or we're supporting Somalia. That is a rhetoric. They talk. We want someone who put in his hand, who come to get there. That's what he's done, Mr. Erdogan. Erdogan, he does not talk. Look in Mogadishu capital, how they change. They build the port. They build the airport. They're building the army, the hospitals, you know, schools. We never had the Western world. We never seen this from Arab Qatar or Saudi Arabia. These big giants who has got billions of dollars who helping the Western world. So what I would like to say, I would say thank you, Mr. Erdogan. Thank you to those who are trying to help us. And let me talk about a little bit about the African Union. African Union came to Somalia 2006. Some of them, they came with honest. I think it might be Ugandan and some other countries, but not our neighbors. Kenya, as my colleague Sahel has already mentioned, Kenya and Ethiopia has got our territory. They always trying to destabilize Somalia, divide and bribe Somali politicians. And we are aware of them. We are aware of this. So today we are ready, not even those African Union who is stationed in Somalia are not doing their job. As you said, they receive $1.5 billion. They're well equipped, they're well fed, they drive in vehicles. Even those vehicles, they kill every day. You know, they overrun for Somali women and Somali children. Who talks about this? Have you ever heard Trump talking about what African Union is doing in Somalia? Or have you heard even the British government?
He thinks your country is a toilet.
Yes. So we're not toilet. Let me tell you this. I'm not the president of Somalia, but if I would, I would speak to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the #1 terrorist of the world. He's a man who has the intellectual of 14 years old. The man who has no respect with religion. He says the Islam is the most providing terrorist in the world. And let me tell you, Islam is the most peaceful religion of the world. Muslim is let me talk about Islam has no anything against Trump or America. We are Muslim. We would like to have Americans in our soil to live side by side with Americans, and we have no grudge. But there are people who are trying to divide the world like Donald Trump. But people of Muslims are aware Donald Trump does not represent the American people.
Okay, very powerful. I was going to take you, sir, but I want to take a lady because I haven't had a female voice yet. And then I'll come to you, sir. Yes, madam.
Good afternoon. My name is Ikran Abdullahi. I am I was a refugee and I am a British citizen. I came here after the Civil War in 1991. I'm just going to follow up on what my fellow colleagues said about Somalia. With Somalia, you said that with Farmaajo becoming the new president, the country was happy. But that happens every 4 years. Every 4 years they see hope. That's why they're happy. It's not because it's a guy that they're familiar with, or it's a guy that they know he's going to change the country. It's just hope for the Somali citizens. And that's what it is across the world. In regards to Trump and everybody taking away, the way I see Somalia is, it's a human body. If you take away now both your arms and both your legs, you're just going to be left with the body and the head, and that's what Somalia is left with at the moment, the body and the head. They can't function fully. And in regards to the comment you said in 2005, I was there in 2005, how Al-Shabaab formed. When the Ethiopians entered the country, what they was doing is they was raping women, they was raping children. Al-Shabaab actually formed the country because they saw a country without a government for 15 years. Nobody's protecting these people. Nobody's doing nothing about this. Children, babies getting killed. Nobody said, let's do something. So why Al-Shabaab formed, me personally, was to put an end to this. And it was to put an end to this by Sharia law. So this was seen as an advantage because there was already the other organizations such as the other Islamic Court. There was all these other things that was going on after the 9/11. So there was intervention. So they started getting bigger and bigger and bigger in a position where now they're fully able to have rifles, you know, lorries, all these things. And the event that took place in October the 14th, that was not Al-Shabaab. That was no way that was Al-Shabaab. No way that was Al-Shabaab, because they don't have the capability of doing that. And why? It's not a Muslim thing. I don't think it should be based on religion. Why EU works? It's because economically it's better for everybody. Why British works? It's about economics. Why nobody wants to help Somalia? Because Somalia has untouched resources like oil. Why is Emirates going to help you? Why is Saudi going to help you? Because you have more oil than they have. And if your resources are tapped into, theirs get stopped. So their tap fund gets stopped automatically there and then. So it's not religion. It's never has been religion. It's about everybody's financial and resources and the way they can survive. And that's exactly what it is with Somalia. Situation with Somalia, it's all about money. Somalia can be so rich. But who wants to touch a country that's war-ridden, that the civilians can't even go? I can't go back to Somalia because I'm scared for my own safety. Do you think another Englishman or an American man is going to go there and sort something? No, nobody's going to go there. And that's the way it is. I hope Somalia does become a better place, but do you think it will be? Me personally, no, because the Muppets that they put as leaders, they are run by somebody else. They are completely run by somebody else.
We need an Arabic translation for Muppets, or perhaps not. Thank you, madam. That was a very successful intervention, very popular one. Sir, tell us about what's the form of this war. Is it low intensity, like say, which was intense enough, Ireland in the middle 1970s, for example? Is it Syria? What is the level of the war, and what is the form of the war?
Yeah, Fatah Ahmed, counterterrorism expert, traveled to 14 countries. Somalia is my actually hometown, and actually I've been around and I worked there, Somalia, for many, many years. And naturally, the problem we have is it's not Al-Shabaab or ISIS. The problem we have is, in this world, you need to have what they call it the big E: enforcement, education, economic. And secondly, American is destabilizing Somalia. The policy is destabilizing Somalia, and actually, he has so much agents, 2,800 Somali agents. They're based in Somalia, and actually, some of them they can't read and write, and they're agent. So CIA, they have a substation in South Somalia, and actually the only countries are doing it, the 15 countries are involved in Somalia. The only countries are doing it great work is number 1 Turkey, number 2 Britain, and number 3 is Qatar. As far as Arab concerned, the Qatar are doing it greatest at the moment. As far number 1 is Turkey. As far as the Western Alliance concerned, is the British government, because for the past 3 years.
Trust me, take my word for this. No good can come of it.
Well, if there's the will, there's a way, always. But the problem is American is 110% destabilizing Somalia because their policy sucks. I'm not talking about, I don't want to go into politics, but we know his background, Mr. Trump, and we know who's supporting them. It's the elite. So he want to make sure Somalia become like Syria.
Talk me through this. Like the lady, the last place in the world I would go is Somalia.
Sure.
And I'm sure that at least I hope she would, my wife would break my legs rather than let me leave the house to go there. At least I hope so. So what is it like on a daily basis? Are there terrorist attacks every day? Are there drone attacks every day? Are there airstrikes every day? Give me a comparison with the level of conflict.
For example, for the past 90 days, there was a problem in northeast south because what's going to happen with the drones, they come from a place called Djibouti. 4,800 American personnel lives there. And actually, they have a biggest station, drones, in Africa. And actually, they do night flying. They do what they call it, overviewing. Their policy, Global War on Terror, GWAT. So what they actually do is they go at night time without telling anybody. So they kill whoever they want and they come back. Then at the same time, after 45 minutes, they supply people, they call it SWATs. They clean the day-to-day work because they don't want the media to come and see it and the world to see it. So they kill, say, an hour 50 people and they clean up and actually they bury it. That's what they do. I seen it doing it. I was there with them.
Have you ever made the connection when Somalia says no to something?
Yeah.
That's when
it steps up.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, there's much more where this came from.
Exactly.
After the break. You're watching كلمة with me, George Galloway, for Al-Mayadeen Television, coming from London, talking about Somalia. Let's go straight back to the audience in the last segment. Madam, you have the microphone. Go ahead, please. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Fatia Abdi. Like Ikram, I myself am a refugee who's now a British citizen. Been here since '91. I've only been to Somalia 2004 for a brief 2 months. Regarding all the drone wars, it's great on their side. They don't lose anybody, but civilians. And civilians are a life with no cost, basically, as far as they see it. They're not worth anything, so there's nothing to report. And the Western world isn't something they're going to see. I mean, it's not even in Somalia itself. It's happened previously in Syria, Palestine. And for us to turn around and talk about the UAE helping, or they aren't even helping people close to their borders, how do you expect them to come to Somalia, to Africa, to help somebody? This is something that's not going to happen. And to be honest, we are a failed state. The only way we are surviving economically is through remittance. That is most of what Somalia's global economy survives on, remittance and aid. And this so-called aid that America and the UK and the UN and all sorts of different alphabets say they give, you don't see the benefits of it. It goes from one palm to another to someone's bank account in some other country. It doesn't actually go to the people. It's never for the people. It's for undercover permission to do the dirty things they do. And that's
Self-reliance
what it's
is
ever
the
going to be.
only answer to
I mean, Al-Shabaab came from a good place. Initially, it was by the people, for the people, wanting to get their own country back, wanting to do something for themselves. Over the years, it got tainted, and they carried on in a different way. But to say that Somalia will all of a sudden become something great, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, you're handing one pile of mess to a new president, to another. It's going to take years for something. It's nothing, there's not going to be a short fix. And if we're looking for a short fix, we're lying to ourselves. There's no
Okay.
something
Yes, well,
like that. It needs someone
I'm for that
stern.
one. Bring back Siad Barry. Now let me talk finally, if I may, to two of our front bench, because there's Madam, did you want to make a brief contribution? You're welcome. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Sarah Mohammed, and one of Somali community lives in London. I just want to say, generally, is actually as a Somalian, if we wait someone else to fix our country, we will wait long time. So
Forever.
yeah, forever, exactly. So we have to come together and say no for anyone else, like the big powers. We have to learn to say no. We will fix our country. We don't need anyone else to fix it. We have got resource, so we have got everything. We don't need anyone actually. So we have to put our mind. We can't fix our country. As long as we do that, we'll be okay. Otherwise, if we wait someone else to do something for us, so we will wait for long. Yeah.
I'm the author of the phrase that the Somalis are the tallest people in the world and the most invisible.
Exactly.
They are tall
and invisible. Yeah,
very
that's
small
truth,
at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what's got to change.
Yeah.
Madam, thank you for that. Let me take you first, sir. The solution is what we try to discuss in the final segment, but are we, in a sense, forlorn on this? I mean, if I gave you the power to bring forth a solution, what would it look like?
The first thing that I would do is that I would, admit that, Somalia cannot do it alone. Because, what is happening in Somalia is also happening in different African countries. In Central African Republic, it's the same thing that is happening in Nigeria. It's the same thing that is happening in Niger, in Libya. So what Africa needs is a collective security, which means, all the African countries, have to make the African Union as effective as it's supposed to be. I mean, the catch-22 is the African Union itself doesn't actually have the resources, so it does rely on its Western counterpart. So I think, the key to the problem that is happening in Somalia is the key to them being able, which then means the African Union, being able to have control over the African continent. Once the African Union has control over the African continent, it will bring all these African countries together. Together, this is the only way they can do it. If you leave it with Somalia alone, you leave it with Nigeria or any other country which has been affected, Libya alone, it is impossible for you to have a solution. Because, the general security is what the Western nations have used. The instability is what they've taken advantage of, to control the economic, to control the education, to control the stability of these countries. So the first thing is for the African Union to be able to stand and put all African countries together. Without that, any individual country cannot do that.
Well, on an ideological level, of course, I support that. But in practice, the people who are doing these crimes against Somalia are Africans. They're being aided and abetted by others, but they are Africans. And of course, I support the African unity and a project for unity. But most of the Arab and African leaders are mere either puppets or hirelings of other powers elsewhere. And imperialism took care of that. They killed the greatest of all African leaders, Patrice Lumumba. They overthrew and caused the downfall of one potentially great African leader after another, leaving the smallest in power.
And that's why we keep saying that.
Please.
Yeah, that is why we keep saying that the solution to the problem is togetherness. We understand that most of the African countries are corrupt, most of their leaders are corrupt. But if you leave a single African country like Somalia to be able to do it on its own against the Western nation, it is not going to work. So the only way for it to work is if, and it's a big if, the African Union can be able to, show that it can take control of the issues that are happening in Africa. But the problem with the African Union is that it is also made up of the same leaders who are corrupt. So there is no solution besides, every country trying it on its own, and which is not going to be, there's not going to be any win-win situation.
Yeah, you're right. It's necessary but not sufficient.
Yes.
Final word, I think, to you, sir.
Thank you very much, George. I would like to say the solution lies within the Somali family, the Somali people. And we must tell clearly to the outside world that the Somalia's problem are not done by the Somalis. those who are acting as tools for others who wanted to control our nation, as I mentioned at the beginning of program, United Arab Emirates and others, should abandon their ugly foreign policy agenda, their ugly geopolitical agenda, to try to obliterate our people. I always like to speak truly and clearly. United States people are people like anybody. Britain, they have a right to succeed, develop, and live peacefully. But I send this message through this wonderful television program, كلمة, that if you want to live peace, if you want to live peace, happy and happiness inside your homes, you must influence your governments to abandon these vicious ideas. I think what I wanted to say, drones are not a solution to our problem. They have been carried out, these have been a tool for American Army since the 2001. And I must tell you, there was a memo leaked from the State Department saying, we have been engaging in a war against Al-Shabaab since, for the last 10 years, why we can't win. The solution lies the world to come together and eliminate these wrong interventions by the rich Gulf states. The world must come together and help Somalia have its own national army and help their people. We need real reconciliation among our people, and there are people who are using their petrodollars to prevent that from happening. If this is not done properly, there would be a day where there are so many armed people in millions who are trying to sort out their problems with their adversaries. And that is not going to be Shabaab. It will be 99% of the young people who are Somalis who will rise up. Everybody now understands our problems are engineered out from outside, and that cannot go on. So the world, George, must change its approach to our people. Thank you.
Briefly, you start, and then you'll have the last word. Go ahead.
I would like to conclude about the current situation in Somalia. Although we're having a problem with our leaders, on the other side, we're having a growing number of young, educated people from all sorts of universities across the world. We have a lot of societies from different sections of backgrounds. So we're hoping in 2020 we will have new Somalia. And when it comes self-reliance, we are example of Africa. We have done and we came together in 1969 supporting Siad Barre's regime in Union of Islamic Courts. During the Union of Islamic Courts, we built very strong neighborhood. We built very strong military within the Union of Islamic Courts. So we know how to build. The problem we're having is the international interference and the invasion of our neighboring using by always America and Britain. So we need peace from America. We need peace from Britain, and we need to rely ourselves. That is
the only way to get that is to invite Russia back. Can I ask the lady for her final word?
Somalia is the only known country that has survived 30 years without a government. So all this nonsense about intervention from the West, no, they've done perfect. What Somalia needs right now is to take out a system called tribalism. So there's all this tribe difference in Somalia. That needs to be completely demolished. Somalia was once the Switzerland of Africa. But how do we get it back to that stage? How do we get it back to that stage? We can get it back to that stage through dictatorship, a good leader. Honestly, that's the only way that Somalia can go on and forward. And secondly, education. They say in Somalia, "Aqoon la'aan wa iftiin la'aan." That means without education, it means there is no light, there is no hope. So we need education and dictatorship. That's the only way forward.
Well, what about all this diaspora, as was alluded earlier? You see, I meet Somali people in Britain, in the Netherlands, and many other places. All around the world, you have these wonderful, tall, beautiful, educated, eloquent people. But they're all outside.
They do things, but they only do things.
Why doesn't all the Somali educated elite go back to Somalia and take the power?
They do. That's the diasporas is what Somalia has been living on. Somalia has been living on diasporas, but honestly, again, it's for personal gain. It's for personal gain and personal profit.
Thank you very much. I hope my fellow Somali are watching me tonight. I want to say to you, nobody wants to help you unless you help. Allah says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, what was the ayah? إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah, the Almighty, says, unless you change yourself, nothing will be changed. Don't think Americans are coming and
helps people who help themselves.
Yes.
If you don't respect yourself, why do you expect anyone else to respect you?
Thank you.
Thank you. You've made a lot of contribution to this. I want to hear from this lady, if you don't mind. Go ahead, madam. Literally, last words.
Thank you very much. My name is Hiba Muhammad. I'm one of Somali activists in here, London. So I like to say just one. It's not a question, actually. It's just idea. I just want to say that Somalia actually I'm really, first of all, really sorry to hear Somalia is a failed state. Very sorry for that, because Somalia is a very beautiful country, very nice country, but at the same time, there is a solution that we need to do now. And one of the solutions, I think, is, what is it called? AMISOM and African Union, all these soldiers to be pulled out from Somalia. Yeah. That's one of the solutions.
No future for foreign forces and foreign agents.
They're doing nothing there.
Because none of them are there, with the exception of Turkey, the brothers think. None of them are there for your benefit. They're there for
their benefit, exactly.
Benefit.
Yeah.
Madam, I can see you're emotional. I'm not particularly an old man, but I've been in Somalia when it was not a failed state. I've been in Somalia when it was a real state, a functioning state, something to be proud of.
Exactly.
And that day, inshallah, will come again.
Thank you very much.
I've been George Galloway. You've been a marvellous audience. Thanks for coming along this evening.